Hello everybody and welcome to Guild Wars 2 Daily. The footage in the background is from me again. This will probably be the last day that it comes from me. The list is growing, so we'll move over to you guys once again next time. I don't know exactly what footage I'll be putting on the background. I think it will just be a bit of a mishmash of different random things that I found that are quite cool, including some catacombs stuff, a cool event to do with a helicopter, just some general stuff. Nothing spoilery, so don't worry. And yeah, so I hope you enjoy that. Also, I'm using a bit of staff gameplay on there because I really like dual daggers, but I have a lot of comments of people saying, "Oh man, I don't do that much on my elite," and it's probably because you're using staff. That's not a fault of you as the player. It's just that staff is a very different weapon. It's a lot more distance. It's got a lot more range on it. Rather than having so much mobility, you have a lot more CC. Pretty much every attunement you have will give you some way of getting away. Only fire is mobility rather than CC, and it's more AoE stuff. So staff is generally a lot better in those big encounters, world versus world. I found it really nice in the dungeons where you just can't get close as an Ellie anyway, and daggers is my favourite for general PvE, but you'll see it's quite different. You'll see me do a few weird things maybe as well on that footage, that like quite weird quirky things you can do on the staff to do with all of your fields, and then trying to use your earth 2 to blast in them and get all kinds of different effects like area swiftness for yourself or might before going and engaging. It's just it's interesting anyway. I don't prefer it to daggers, but anyway. Also there was that intro. This came from Revens 101. Thank you very much to him. He spent a fair bit of time on it. We were trying to get it to a reasonable length, so I hope you guys like that. That'll probably be on daily from now for at least a long while until the intro changes. It's very similar to the countdown, which I quite like. On to news. I thought I would show you guys probably the best place you can go to hear about the game in its current state from ArenaNet itself. It's a page on the wiki called Game Status Updates. There'll be a link in the description. Very, very handy if you generally want to be up to date on a lot of this different stuff that's going on. They will tell you a lot of things. In fact, too much. I'm not going to mention all of it on daily. Show you the truth, a lot of it's just, oh, this service is down at the moment, this service is up at the moment. The trading post, for example, came up for quite a while the other day, just after I'd filmed the previous daily that I did before the weekend, and it will tell you if it's up or if it's down, and certain things that have been going on with the servers. I believe SPVP was down for a little while as well, but might be back up now. But it's just generally very good if you want to know exactly what they're doing or what they're working on. My summary of it, though, is important things that I think you guys should know. Remember that there was a bit of hacking going on. ArenaNet has been rolling out the email authentication. That actually had a couple of problems as well. Some people were getting locked out from that, but that all seems to be rolled out fine now as well. But if you are still worried, the way the hackers are actually doing it, and ArenaNet have been very open about this, trying to make sure everybody knows, is basically other places that have been hacked. You've probably heard about this kind of stuff going on a lot recently, where other forums and things have just been hacked, big things have been hacked. What they've just been doing is they've got access to large databases of usernames and password combinations from other places, and then they're just trying to see if they can find a match in Guild Wars 2, and a lot of the times they're hitting that. So if you have used the same email account for Guild Wars 2 as you have for some forums, and you've got the same password or something like that, bear that in mind. It'd be a very good idea to make your password at least unique to Guild Wars 2. That's what I've done since the start of Guild Wars 1, so just be very careful of that. That's basically how they're getting in. It's not really through any other method. It's not some flaw in the back end of Guild Wars 2. That's just them matching things up and getting lucky. We talked a little bit about their plans to increase the worlds in Europe. Well, actually, there have been 3 more worlds added, not just in Europe, but America too. And the world population limit on all worlds seems to have gone up, which is quite good. I'm wondering how this is going to affect things for later on around the world. I'm already finding, and this might be just because I've played a hell of a lot of the game at this point, I'm already finding I'm in a lot of areas where there aren't many other players around, particularly the Char areas, Blaze Ridge Steppes, the Fields of Ruin, the Iron Marches. All these places feel very empty, and they're not necessarily very high level zones either, particularly Blaze Ridge Steppes, which is just a fantastic area. It's one of the first places they actually designed for Guild Wars 2. It was there way back when in Gamescom. It's so fun there, but there was rarely anyone ever around. It was just me and a friend last night. We were playing for ages, and we went to all these different events that just had all this cool stuff going on, and we rarely saw other people, maybe one guy every now and then. So I would, if you want a recommendation of a place to go to, check out those Char areas. They're definitely my favourite. The locale of Ascalon, I didn't think I'd like that much. I wasn't really looking forward to that much, and particularly under Char control, I didn't think I'd like it that much. But those areas are really, really cool. I think I've had the most fun in Guild Wars 2 so far in those areas. There's so much cool stuff going on. Oh, and on that note as well, I found many little and some proper jumping puzzles around there as well, which I have been filming with Mike. So those will be going up on the channel, maybe even one today, we'll see. So yeah, as we're getting into the new areas now, I'm finding all the new jumping puzzles, and they'll be continuing on, which is very cool. So yeah, anyway, the world limit limit has been upped. We'll have to see how the game feels in a couple of months, whether it feels too empty or too populated. At the moment, I actually quite like that there are certain places you can go in the game that are really densely populated. You can go to Lion's Arch, and at the bank there are tons of people around there. And I also quite like that there are these very quiet, out-of-the-way places, which is very similar really to Guild Wars 1 actually, but Guild Wars 1 was just very extreme. It was very few areas that were insanely highly populated and many areas that had very low population. But we'll see how things pan out now that the world limits have been upped even more. I was under the impression that they'd kind of reached their limit for world population, but maybe not. Maybe they could go even higher if they continue to sell copies of the game, which brings me to probably the most exciting bit of news actually that happened the other day. ArenaNet had to disable sales of Guild Wars 2 on their website. They had to disable it in a very weird way, if you want to term it like this. Guild Wars 2 sold out. They released a statement where they said that they always maintained that there would be a point that they would disable sales of the game if too many people were buying it and they didn't have the server resources to maintain that, and it was affecting the gameplay of other people too negatively, i.e. you're getting too bad latency because the world is just that full and there are so many people coming in, which is a crazy thought. So this kind of means, unless they are incredibly incompetent, this means that ArenaNet and NCSoft, or whichever one was making this decision, never considered that Guild Wars 2 would become this big, because if they did consider that it would become this big, what would they have done? They would have dedicated more server resources so that they could continue getting these sales. It's actually a really good problem to have, I suppose, saying the game is so good, so many people have bought this, it's been overwhelming, the reception to the game has been positive enough that people are continuing to buy it. I mean, Guild Wars 2, as it was launching, was in this very weird situation where there were a lot of us very hyped about the game, but then there were a lot of us saying, oh, this can't be the revolution in MMOs, there's so much stacked on top of this game, there's so much that says this game will be this, this, and this, I want to see the proof first before I buy it. And there was a big fear there, really, that it would collapse on itself because people would be expecting something different, or they would think, oh, it's just not going to work. So there would have been a lot of tentative buyers out there who have been impressed. They've seen the games come out, they've read the reviews, they've seen stuff of it, and they thought, right, this launch game actually is possibly as good as everyone's saying, and they've decided to go for it. And so many of those tentative buyers have done that now that they don't have the capacity for them anymore, which is, I think, a really cool thing to have happened. Obviously, they've raised the world limits and stuff now, so that those people will be able to get in game at some point, but I think that's a very good sign. I don't know how short-sighted NCSoft were with their resources or what, but it is a very positive thing to have happened, and hopefully as well that might have drummed up a bit more interest in the game, because now people will say, whoa, more people want to buy Guild Wars 2 than it can actually handle, this game must be great, and then, you know, it will just snowball. So anyway, that was a really cool bit of news for those of you who have already bought the game, that is. But I think you might be able to buy it from other places. It's just through guildwars2.com you can't buy it at the moment. There will be codes and boxed copies and stuff that you can still get from elsewhere. Two other quick little bits of news. One of them is something I'm going to be answering in a question in a second. There were launch events that were around. ArenaNet did launch events around the US, and at these they were giving away more of those in-game t-shirts, so congratulations to everyone who actually managed to get their hands on one of those, that got to go to one of those. So there are more of those t-shirts around there. They seem quite cool. I've still not seen one in-game, which is probably a good sign, because it'll mean it's one of these like super rare things, which will be awesome. I'm still curious if the devs in-game will be wearing like the arena gear, the commando profession stuff that was in the game at some point. I think they talked a while ago about how they might do that, so that would be cool. You'd have like the fans that have gone to like the conventions and stuff wearing the shirts that the devs wear in real life, and in game the devs wear like all the commando stuff. That would be cool. Anyway, as for me in game recently, you will have noticed that on the weekend we didn't have any daily. That's not a plan of mine. I'm not going to be not doing daily on weekends. There will be daily, I hope. It's just at the moment I'm so overwhelmed by the game with the amount of things I want to do. Frankly, I just kept playing it and playing it and playing it and playing it. I did over the weekend film a lot of stuff with Mike. I have now been into every single path of the explorable version of the Ascalon Catacombs. I've got that achievement for completely finishing the catacombs there, and I filmed all of the paths. I'm hoping to edit it down into just the key stuff. Some of those encounters are very difficult and took us a long while to figure out. It was a lot of fun finally getting them sussed though, and I think we've got quite a lot of insight to offer. If you've been trying the catacombs, you can expect some videos soon of exactly those paths and the really difficult parts that come from them and how we managed to solve them, because frankly, they were very, very tough, but very fun when we finally got through them. So that was awesome. Also, as I say, I've been spending a lot of time in the chart areas. I've kind of decided I kind of want to 100% map complete everything from Lion's Arch north. So I've now 100%ed 52% of the game, I believe, at the moment, and that includes every single starter area, the area just after them, so Kessex Hills, the Brisbane Wildlands, those kinds of places, and then I've done the Harathi hinterlands, and for Ascalon I've done all of the areas except for the Iron Marches and the 60 to 71 as well, and I'm hoping to do all of that. Then I'll go to Lornar's Path and down, and yeah, I've just been taking my time with it. It's been so good. I've racked up well over 100 hours now, and I feel like I'm making good progress. At least I can see a lot of people in the guild have started to get to level 80, but they have very few achievement points, and I think that's a bit of a shame. It seems like they might have rushed it, but yeah, I do have lots of footage which we can be seeing soon. Anyway, the question for today is quite a long one. It's about an exploit that a lot of people were taking advantage of in Holbrack, which I'll elaborate on after the question. So this came from the Games for May, who said, as I'm sure you know, ArenaNet has been banning lots of people for supposedly exploiting the game. An example is the issue with the Norn Tier 2 weapons. I'll admit that I myself did buy a couple of weapons through this bug, but apparently, and thankfully, not enough to warrant a ban. However, I still believe it's ArenaNet's fault in the first place, and that they should not have the right to punish the players because of their own mistakes. I admire ArenaNet as a games developer, and their attitude and interaction with the community, and I desperately want my opinion not to change, but now I somehow feel my faith in them fading. As a matter of fact, discovering exploits can be seen as a challenge, and I personally derive great enjoyment from it. It makes the game exciting. While it's true that I keep my secrets to myself and never share them with anyone, I have exploited the game mechanics in Domain of Anguish more times than I would care to count, and have profited greatly from it. That does not mean I haven't had to work really hard and waste hundreds of hours and millions of gold just for the sake of running around in there trying to figure out what I can do to make the overall run just that 1 minute faster. Since when was it not the responsibility of the developer to make sure there are no bugs in their game or other loopholes to exploit? Perhaps the cultural weapons bug was not so special since it did not require much effort to exploit, but I do believe that some exploits do add to the experience and do have a place in the gaming industry. Dota is a prime example of how exploitation of the game engine and mechanics is beneficial to the game as a whole, and I can only hope that ArenaNet realises this. First of all, I don't think that by banning people that did this exploit, that ArenaNet have made a statement they don't agree with these exploits that you're describing here altogether. I mean, ArenaNet typically don't have a history of that at all. They embrace a lot of exploits in the first game. Let me just explain for anyone who doesn't know. The Tier 2 Norn weapons in Holbrack, which should cost quite a lot of karma, were actually incredibly cheap. People found this out and started buying tons and tons and tons of them. In some cases, thousands of them. ArenaNet found out, and they issued out bans to everyone who did this in accordance to how many of these items they bought. So if you bought, I believe it was over 15, you had a light ban, and as it went higher and higher, you had a more severe ban until eventually it was a permanent ban from the game. Then they reissued this and said, hold on, no, let's not permanently ban people just yet. Perhaps people didn't know how we roll. Okay, we're going to give you guys just a 3-day ban, but if you ever do this again, this is our stance. We are permanently banning people that take advantage of exploits like this, so don't do it. I think that ArenaNet was sending a message